What you gonna do when Sheriff John Brown come for you? Tell me what you wanna do, what you gonna do? Yeah, bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
Well, first I'd like to address, I know some people have been saying, why are we having lots of police officers from off island coming over here and doing traffic law enforcement? I just want to take your viewers and listeners back to the town hall meeting that we had at the beginning of the year. And there was a number of people at the meeting, and we had a 2.5, 3 hour meeting, and most of the discussion surrounded traffic law enforcement and the fact that people thought that the driving habits of people on Bowen Island were becoming dangerous. So we made a commitment to the people at the meeting, and ostensibly the people in the community, that we would start a traffic law initiative. Now, as everybody knows, there are 3 full-time police officers posted on Bowen Island. We brought in these extra resources to enhance our enforcement initiative. With the objective of lowering the dangerous driving behavior of people on the island. Some of the other issues, I know some of the other issues are not exactly aggressive or dangerous driving behaviors, and that some people have been pulled over and they've been written tickets for things such as the seatbelt. Well, to me that's a dangerous driving behavior, as is pulling a U-turn in the ferry lineup, because these laws are there for a reason, and if everybody obeys them to the letter of the law, it greatly reduces our safety on the roadway. And I wrote in the local paper here, The Undercurrent, last week that there's been lots of research done over the years about how we can reduce, what sort of traffic enforcement reduces injury and fatal accidents on rural roads. Number 1, impaired driving, speeding, and failing to wear a seatbelt on a rural road. Those are the big 3 things that the police generally target on. Now, there's a whole bunch of other offenses. We don't bring people over here. We bring people over here and we tell them our focus is, our initiative is to reduce dangerous driving behaviors. And if in the course of their duties they're pulling a vehicle over and they find a defective vehicle, or they find other offenses, we have an obligation to the law to investigate those.
Very understandable.
There's 2 pieces of legislation. There's the Motor Vehicle Act, which permits emergency vehicles to disobey the traffic laws in the pursuit of traffic law enforcement, or when responding in an emergency situation. And that just doesn't apply to the police, that applies to the ambulance, and it applies to the fire department, and it applies to police officers. The other piece of legislation is the EVO, the Emergency Vehicle Operator legislation, which basically tells us that that's our policy and our legislation, provincial legislation, that deals with things such as high-speed pursuits.
Right.
So one of the things that we're permitted to do is we're permitted to close the gap before we pull a vehicle over. So we can exceed the speed limit for a short period of time to close the gap, but we have to do it with our emergency lights on, emergency equipment on.
What if it is somewhat dangerous to do that?
Well,
what's the policy? What's the law legislation on that?
We are, if in a situation like that, let's say the worst case scenario, if there was any kind of an accident, we're liable.
Right.
The RCMP or any of the other emergency services would be liable. We have to drive in an emergency situation with all reasonable care. We can't go running through red lights without stopping and looking and confirming that the intersection is clear. As an example, the same as we had no traffic lights, but the same as a 4-way intersection here on Bowen Island, or even a 2-way.
Okay.
Okay. The Motor Vehicle Act allows the police to pull over any vehicle any point in time to verify or confirm that the vehicle is being operated in accordance with the Motor Vehicle Act and the regulations. If a person sees a tail light that is burnt out, or a broken tail light, or a headlight that's burnt out, or actually, even in fact, none of those defects, we can pull a vehicle over, but we have to articulate why. We can't just pull a vehicle over and say, well, because I want to. We want to confirm that the person driving has a valid driver's license, that they're carrying their driver's license with them, that the vehicle registration is in the vehicle, that the occupants are all wearing seatbelts. So all those types of things. So the Motor Vehicle Act permits the police to do that. And that's the reason behind it. So in a situation where, let's use the example.
Sorry, let me interject. We got a lawnmower that started up here.
So back to police officer pulls somebody over. They walk up to the car, and there could be open liquor in the car.
Right.
Well, what that does is it gives the police the authority to search the vehicle under the Provincial Liquor Control Act.
Right.
They may notice an odor of marijuana emanating from inside the car.
Right.
What that does, it triggers something called reasonable probable grounds to believe that there's marijuana in the vehicle or on the people in the vehicle. Then the people can be arrested. Technically speaking, the car could even be seized and towed to a secure place so that the vehicle could be searched. Now, I understand in the incident you're talking about, clearly, stating the obvious, the vehicle was not seized, it wasn't towed and seized, so it could be searched at some other point. But clearly there was somebody in handcuffs, and the person was, I'm assuming, properly arrested and chartered and warned, which then triggers the right for the police to search the vehicle. Now, there is some Supreme Court of Canada decisions that have supported the right of the police to search motor vehicles.
Okay.
Under those, without benefit of a warrant, under those types of circumstances. So I know some people apparently have cited a recent Supreme Court or Appeal Court of Saskatchewan ruling, but in my view, the Supreme Court of Canada would sort of trump that decision. And I don't know what's happening with the decision of the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal. But in the incident you're talking about, or in any other incident that a police officer finds themselves in, there's something we have called discretion. If we see roaches in an ashtray, we have the discretion to seize the roaches. But essentially, they're roaches. They're like cigarette butts. Probably nobody's going to use them. They're roaches, and they're in the ashtray for a reason. They're probably going to be discarded, but it still gives us grounds to believe that there still is a controlled drug or substance, which is still illegal in Canada, inside the vehicle.
Okay.
Then answer your question.
Well, yeah. What's the law though on that? Are you allowed to possess any amount of marijuana?
No, you're not.
Okay.
Unless you have a prescription from a doctor for medicinal purposes.
So in that instance, even though you can't comment on it, I would assume that he felt that it wasn't worth the time, or
that's the discretion of the police officer. Yeah. And I'll say on camera what I said to you earlier today. A lot of police officers don't charge people for small amounts of marijuana because that's what they choose to do, because there's far more pressing issues that they may have, and it's just their individual discretion not to. And I will admit that it is a very time-consuming process to do. It's about 2 hours of paperwork. So, and generally speaking, when people go to court, they'll get an absolute or a conditional discharge.
Right.
Unless they have a substantive history.
Okay. Well, I guess that kind of we don't really have much more time today. Maybe we can bring you on again.
Sure.
A further episode of Cops on Bowen, because right here we have a cop on Bowen. So this is it, real life, right on Bowen TV. So
just before we sign off, if anybody has any questions or wants to get some information about what the law says, feel free to talk to any one of us.
Okay. Great.
Okay, George.
Thanks for coming on today, Don.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right.
See you, folks.